Hello, I'm Glenn Darling from the Open Horizon team, and I'd like to tell you about how to use the secure device onboarding feature in Open Horizon. And I've created a little GitHub repo that I think makes this a little easier. So if you clone the Mosquito Easy SDO that O stands for Open Horizon, then you'll get these instructions. And I make a couple of assumptions. First is that you have a Linux device that you want to set up as an SDO device. In other words, you want to simulate the manufacture of an SDO device like those that are manufactured by Intel and others. And you have some user level credentials for an Open Horizon Management Hub set up on some other machine other than the one that you want to simulate. So first of all, we're going to do the steps to simulate the SDO manufacturing. And so the machine I have set up for that is this window. I have two machines set up here. The green one on the right is the one I'm going to simulate the SDO manufacturer, and the one on the left is just another machine where I have my credentials set up. So on this machine on the right, we have, it happens to be an HP retail device called an MP9, and it's x86-64, and it's running Ubuntu 18.04.4, and this is where we're going to do that setup. Now, what it says here is log into the machine. I'm already logged in, and then either git clone this repo or just copy the SDO device steps file. And so let's go up here and take a look at the SDO device steps file. It's just a bunch of shell commands. So I'm going to switch to raw mode. Hit that raw button so I can easily copy all this stuff. And then I'm going to edit a file over here, SDO device steps, paste all that stuff in there and save it. And then let's go back to the instructions. We're going to source that file. So back to the instructions, run the command source SDO device steps on that machine. So that's going to take those things in that file and execute them one by one as shell commands. And that only takes a couple of seconds. And what it's done is it's configured your environment. That's why you use source instead of running this directly. And it's also downloaded and changed the execute permission on simulate mfg.sh, the script that we're going to use to simulate manufacturing. So now run this command. It says now run this, right? So copy that entire command from the screen here and paste it in and hit enter. So that is all you need to do to simulate the manufacturing. That's the complete process on this Edge machine. Now, when it's finished, we'll take a closer look at it, and then we'll shut it down, and then we'll be prepared to use it. So now let's slide ahead to the next section here. Now, I'm just going to cut a little bit of time out here. This only takes maybe 3 minutes, but I won't bore you with that. So when this machine finishes getting set up over here, we'll jump into the next parts of the process. Oh, well, it's just finishing now. Maybe I won't cut out. It's pretty quick. And so what it is doing is it's generating this thing called a voucher. And that voucher is stored in this file right here. And I'm going to do cat that file. And since it doesn't have a line feed at the end, I'm going to insert a line feed by doing that. And so there's two things that I want you to note here. One is the device ID, which starts with 37C. We'll take a look at that a little bit later. And then this voucher. This is the voucher that uniquely identifies this particular piece of hardware. So I am going to put that onto the other machine. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to paste it in here. Okay, so I have a file over here now called voucher.json. Now let's go to the instructions. So on the other machine, they want me to check that my credentials work, so let's do that. And if you get a JSON like that, that means it did work. And let's also take a look at the exchange. What's in the exchange right now? There's no nodes registered here, and there's no deployment policies published here either. So it's pretty much empty. So now we're going to git clone this repo onto that machine. So I scroll up to the top here and I go to the code button and hit the copy. So I've got this string here in my copy buffer, and then I can do git clone that command, or that repo I should say, and I'm going to cd in there, and let's take a look at what's inside there. So it has the steps that we used over here on the right, that I used over here on the right, and it has two policy files, a deployment policy file and a node policy file. Also, I put on the directory above this that voucher file, so I'm going to move that down here. /voucher to dot. So now we have the voucher.json file down here too. And with that, let's take a look around at those files in a second. Yeah, so save the voucher file, it says here. We've done that. Now, optionally, we can customize the node.policy.json. So the node policy JSON is unique to this particular node. So typically you will want to modify it. We'll take a look at it in a moment. And then if you do modify it in any substantive way, you probably also need to modify your deployment policy to make sure that it matches that node policy. And if your simulated device is not x86 64 or AMD 64 architecture, then you're going to need to edit the architecture in the deployment policy.json file. I'll show you that in a bit as well. So you can use ARM32, ARM34, or 64, I mean, if you have your device with that architecture. And then finally, the other thing you might want to change is the service that's going to be deployed. I picked this one because it's always automatically available in every Open Horizon Management Hub. It's published there by default in all of the management hubs. So it's just easy for you to use. You can put your own service in there, of course, for a real world case. And then there's a few commands we're going to execute here. But let's pop back over to take a look at those files. So I'm going to do cat node.policy.json and deployment.policy.json. So this is the node policy that we're going to have set up on the machine on the right. Now, I actually took these values off the label on the bottom of the machine. I'm going to give it the name of MB9 Retail, but its serial number is actually this string, and the product model number is actually this string. And then there's a label on the device that says HP ProDesk, whatever. And so I put that in here. And I also added that the role that I intend for this device is to be a shelf monitor. So I'm planning to stick a camera onto this and have it look at a shelf in a retail store and run some inferencing software that'll tell me if the shelf is bare and needs to be restocked, something like that. Then we have the deployment policy. So deployment policy has properties and constraints. All policies have properties and constraints. This one has properties and constraints as well. But I normally don't put any constraints into a node policy, and I normally don't put any properties into a deployment policy. So typically I just have properties here and constraints here. Now, if this constraint is true for any of the nodes in this organization, role equals shelf monitor, then this service will be deployed there. All right, so because it says role equals shelf monitor, then I have already picked this for the node policy, role equals shelf monitor. So this will match to this, and that will cause this to be deployed onto that machine if all goes well. So the next step then is to register this machine's voucher on the right here with this node policy, which tells Open Horizon that if you ever see the machine that has that corresponds to this voucher, you are to configure it with this node policy. And so we'll go ahead and do that. Come on, there we go. Okay, so HZN voucher import voucher.json. So that's the local file that contains this voucher that I have highlighted on the right, and minus minus policy node.policy.json. And so it has updated the node, so there should be a node existing for this now, and then it's updated the policy on that node. So let's just do HZN exchange node list, and we should see our node there. Yeah, and notice that the identifier that the node has been given is the same as the device UUID that you saw over here. So that's just a nice little check that this voucher corresponds to that device UUID. Okay, now with that, we need to set up a deployment policy so that there will be something that actually drives some software installation once this machine is recognized and configured with that policy. So I'm going to do a deployment add policy, and we end up with my policy. So I just give it the name my policy here. You can put any name you like for it there. So we can do HCN exchange deployment list policy, and we'll see there's my policy, and we can go in and look at it in more detail if we wanted to. So at this point, everything is set up on the Open Horizon Management Hub side, and so I did that from this machine here. And over on this side of things, this machine is all ready to go to the field, and or to be sold to a customer, and the customer would be given the voucher so that they could do all the things that I did over here in this window. But also I wanted to show you a couple of things. So first of all, HCN version. The HCN command does not exist here. And docker ps, there's no Docker images running on this host. So now I'm going to do sudo shutdown -h now. So that machine is turned off. Now we've captured its voucher. We could give this to the field and have them go out into the field and turn it on. So that's what I'm going to do now. I have to press a physical button on the front of the MP9 to power it up, and then let's watch what happens. So I'll go do the ping command that I did before when I was testing this. So redo that command. So it's pinging this IP address that I happen to know is this particular machine, just so I can tell when it has powered up. And when it does power up, I'm going to connect into it. There we are. So it's up now, and I can go SSH into it, and I can go, let's see, watch HCN agreement list. Now look, it says HCN not found. Did you see that very quickly there? So the HCN command didn't exist at first, but now that command does exist, and it's running it, and it's getting this empty list. There are no agreements. But now it has attracted the attention of one of the agbots in the management hub, and the agbot proposed an agreement, and the agent has accepted the agreement, and it's started executing and finalized the agreement. So now if we exit out of here, we can do docker ps, and there it is. So our IBM.hello world example is now running on this machine. So that's really all there is to it. On the green machine on the right, I just sourced a small file, and then I executed one command to simulate the manufacturer, and when it's done, I captured the voucher.json file. That's it. Over on some other machine that can access the management hub, like this blue one on the left, I did HCN, I copied over the voucher file, and then I did HCN voucher import to attach this node policy. So you have to create a node policy, or you can use mine. And then after HCN poacher import, I also did HCN deployment add policy to create a deployment policy that matches that node policy so that it will force the IBM Hello World to be run. And that's all there is to it. Hope you found this helpful, and thanks for your interest in Open Horizon.